Depression is a leading disability worldwide. Every 3 seconds, someone somewhere takes their own life. In Australia, 7 people every day. Suicide rates have steadily been increasing in the last 10 years. Black Dog Ride aims to put an end to this trend by engaging with local communities and getting people to talk about mental health.
The original Black Dog Ride around Australia was in July 2009, and since then we've done the ride to the Red Centre for 4 years. And I thought for the 5th year we'd make it a commemorative ride and go around Australia again. This time I took a few mates. There was 60 of us headed off on the same day as that original ride on July 26th, and yeah, it was an amazing adventure.
Steve had a long-held desire to travel around Australia, but it wasn't until tragedy struck his closest friend that he decided to set out on the first Black Dog Ride.
The catalyst for the ride was really the suicide death of my best mate's wife, Anna.
It was March 2008. I lost my dear wife and mother to my children. She'd fall asleep in the lounge, and I'd look at her and I'd say, "There's something missing. There's something I didn't know." There was like a missing piece to the puzzle, and I could never work it out. And then it came out that she'd been molested as a child. And not only had this man been molesting her, he had been molesting her brother at the same time. Anna was 18, they were living in Canberra, she came to Perth, and John was on his own in Canberra, and he was very fond of Anna, and Anna very fond of him. And apparently he attempted suicide on what had happened to him as a young boy. Anna was never told by her mother. 6 years before we lost Anna, Anna's mother came to stay with us. And one night she had a few scotches and she disclosed that John, as a 16-year-old, had tried to take his own life. And at that time, it was an opportune time for Anna to tell her mother that she was involved and she knew, but she didn't. And she became remorseful about it, and remorse led to depression. She did have one attempt at suicide before we lost her, and it was kept quiet because she didn't want anyone to know. And then 4 or 5 months later we lost her.
It brought back memories of losing my mum to suicide many years before, and having a daughter who suffers from depression. It just all came up in one overwhelming feeling that I had to do something to talk about this silent killer, if you like, and this illness that was not discussed to a level that I thought was healthy.
I was in a bad space. I mean, had I not been the same sort of person I am, I probably would have felt doing the same thing. I just didn't want to be here. It was 1,000 times I wanted to die, you know. My best mate had just disappeared. You know, the girl that I loved and cherished had gone.
I made the decision at the wake that I needed to do something, and came up with the concept of getting on my bike and riding around the country, and, as we say many times on this ride, starting the conversation.
Mental illness is really common. It's much more common than a lot of physical illnesses. The current estimates are that about 1 in 5 Australians aged 16 and over are walking around every year with a diagnosable common mental illness, depressive disorder, anxiety disorders, substance use disorder. And many of those people do not know they've got the illness, and many of them do not seek help and get the right help to help them. And there is lots of help out there. Mental illness isn't a life sentence. It's an episode like any other illness, and people do get better from it, and we just have to change those stigmatising attitudes.
It is okay to use the suicide word. It is okay to reach out to someone you're worried about and actually ask the question. If they're not thinking of suicide, they'll know that you care. If they reveal that they are thinking about suicide, then you don't need to fix the problem, you just need to stay with them.
The main thing is talk about it. Talk to people. There's a lot of support. It's getting better. The support is getting better in communities.
My belief is that depression has one aim and one aim only, and that's to put you in the grave. And if you don't do something about it, that's where you'll end up.
Black Dog Ride highlights the importance of recognising mental health in Australia, especially depression. 1 in 5 Australians suffer some form of mental health, and the Black Dog has proven time and time again since 2009 that the campaign that the Black Dog Ride does nationally has highlighted the importance of recognising those with mental health issues.
From humble beginnings, the Black Dog Ride has grown larger than Steve could ever have imagined. Hundreds of riders from all over Australia have come together to participate in numerous events, from the annual ride to the Red Centre to the statewide one-dayers.
The growth has surprised me, but I suppose I had an inkling of the pent-up demand, if you like, when I did my first ride, just from the riders that popped in and out of the ride. But the take-up has been pretty overwhelming. The number of people who have a passion for the cause that they share with me, and not all the circumstances are the same.
We can go anytime, I suppose. Beautiful part of the world, lovely facilities here, lovely morning tea. You're made very well. Typical Black Dog Ride.
There's a guy coming in called Cummin. When he gets in here, telling me his tyres are gone and they've gone to Kevin. And that he's going to have to wear knobblies on his bike.
Did he do that?
He did. And when I saw him, I said, "Oh, Kevin got your front tyre," because he said to put it on his. Kevin. I said, "Did it look like a racing tadpole?" He said, "Yes." I said, "He would."
My dog's always looking forward. He's not looking back.
We'll believe you.
The ride began at Batteau Bay, 100 kilometres north of Sydney. From there, the group travelled north through Queensland, across the top end, down along the West Australian coast, along the Nullarbor, and finally finishing at Bondi Beach. In total, the team covered 14,500 kilometres in just 32 days.
Everyone's on this ride for their own personal reasons, but most of them have a pretty strong connection to depression themselves. Personally, they've suffered, or a loved one's suffered, or tragically, they've lost someone.
I'm the daughter of a returned serviceman and career soldier, so I grew up with suicide as a reality of my life, and I've lived with depression and PTSD, and I care for someone with bipolar.
There'd been a little bit of depression in my family, and my mother had suffered from it. When I was 18, I lost my mum to suicide 2 months after my birthday. I've got a lot of close family who have suffered with depression, as well as suicide attempts, and a couple of friends which have actually passed away due to suicide.
I've had a long journey with depression myself over the years, and I've experienced suicide firsthand in my family.
Oh, absolutely. I went within a cat's whisker, a funny term to use, but of taking my own life. And that's another reason why I'm involved now, because if I can save one life in what I'm doing, I'll be more than happy.
Everyone's got reasons, like they want to spread the word and do that, and yes, that is all part of it. But I think I wanted to spread the word by saying who I am and why it's affected me.
You go through some of these troubles and you decide, well, maybe I can go and save some, or not save somebody else, but you know, get somebody else to think about it and actually admit that they've got a problem.
Isolation and limited access to services means those living in rural and remote areas can be particularly vulnerable to mental illness.
Each year, our Northern Territory frontline police officers deal with the effects of mental illness, depression, and sadly, on far too many cases, suicide, the permanent solution to what is often a temporary problem. And it struck me that when a jurisdiction the size of the Northern Territory loses more people each year from them taking their own lives than in road crashes, we have the capacity to do something about it.
As we've heard as we're going round, it's the funding's not there in regional areas, and that's where suicide is a big problem.
Rural Australia and rural around the world, I suppose, is struggling. So when we look at globalisation and we look at financial constraints and production, all that, these people are struggling, and they're doing it hard.
The smaller communities in particular, they need all the help they can get. And if we can just give them a little bit of hope and just let them know that they're not doing this on their own. And I think that's one of the important things, whether it's an individual or it's a community, they need to know that they're not on their own and that there are people out there that care and that are trying to help.
They are people who die, who shouldn't die, and we need to, as a community, as a mature community, do what we can to rally around those individuals and provide them with the support that enables them to get their lives back where it should be.
In the lead up to the ride, we communicate with all the people that are registered through regular rider updates, and those updates are designed to let them know what's going to be ahead of them, let them know how to prepare themselves physically and mentally for the ride, let them know how to prepare their bikes and what to expect, some of the challenges they might face during the ride, the right sort of gear to wear, the carrying capacity on their bike, being able to carry everything you need because you've got to be self-contained. Some of the riders were camping, so they had swags and all that sort of thing. So they've got to carry a fair bit of gear. The logistics for a ride like this are massive, from just getting the registration process organised to planning the route, to arranging accommodation for the group of 60, or a bit over 60 as we went around.
I went out on the Black Dog ride, met good people who made me smile. Nationwide, biking procession, raising funds to fight depression.
We start about 12 months beforehand, preparing for something like this. liaising with local communities, with local bike riders, bringing people together basically.
It's a pretty full-on exercise just to get them on the road, and then keeping them on the road and keeping them organised for 32 days, that's a whole nother set of logistics.
The riders were kept on the road by a dedicated support crew. Working long hours, they assisted the riders with the inevitable accidents and breakdowns.
I'm here to help the guys that are making the effort to get around Australia and get the message out about depression and suicide. I think it's a brilliant effort, and it goes right back to the founder and Steve. To me, I joined Black Dogs seriously last year, and I've now taken it on board, and I want to be doing this for as long as I possibly can. I set out initially to make sure that every bike left Sydney and got back to Sydney via doing the Round Australia run. It is a big ask, but we've achieved what we set out to do up to date. We've got all bikes that have broken down or had mishaps. We've managed to get them back on the road, and they're still running.
A lot of hard work, a lot of behind the scenes work. It's up before the riders, we go to sleep later than the riders, and it's all about taking care of the riders and making sure their journey, their ride, is as comfortable and as enjoyable as possible.
We've had 2 emus hit. We've had a couple of roos hit, we've had broken drive shafts, we've had punches, we've had blown shock absorbers. There's various other numerous smaller things. There's an ECU failed on one bike, and we've managed to keep all these bikes, get them back running on the road again.
This ride isn't just for members of the public, but for the riders as well. And we are continually, every hour, working behind the scenes to try and lift those spirits, bring people together, build their capacity, so we'll get to the finish line safely.
The Black Dog Ride was also supported by a number of companies and organisations, including Holden, Yahava Coffee Works and Lions Club.
Look, the Lions have been amazing supporters. They in a sense, sponsored my accommodation all the way around Australia on that first ride. I believe the Lions are a conduit to the communities we go through.
Everywhere all over Australia, everywhere that they go to, where we have a Lions Club, so therefore we're supporting the Black Dogs throughout Australia, every club.
Our message filters back through them into their community, and I know anecdotally and from personal contact and feedback I get from Lions that they value their involvement in Black Dog Ride, and they're an enormous part of the ride.
Shower. I wouldn't take one last night if I realised it was going to be that effective. No, in seriousness, thank you. Please take the message back to your workplace and start talking. And that's all we ask. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Enjoy your ride.
Yeah.
Although women are more likely to experience depression or anxiety, men are less likely to seek help. 80% of all suicides in Australia are committed by men.
Men don't cry, you know. That's especially in my generation. You know, we were brought up basically a man doesn't cry. He gets over it. You know, gets on with life. Well, I'm sorry, men do cry, and if they don't outwardly cry, they're crying inside. You know, and this business of it will be right is a joke. You know, because we think we're invisible. We're not. You know, we're still human beings.
Well, initially I didn't even know I had depression myself. It was my wife eventually saying to me, you need some help, and I was in the military at the time, and she said, I'm going to ring the Padre at work and get him to come and talk to you, because I was just angry. I was angry all the time. That started a drip feed for me thinking, yeah, maybe I do need help, and so eventually I did. I rang Vet Affairs and I got help and through the military. and from there it went on to a proper diagnosis of depression. And once I acknowledged what I had, then I could start the healing.
I actually contemplated suicide, you know, actually further than contemplated, I planned it. The only step that I hadn't concluded was the actual when. I concluded how, you know, and where and all that sort of stuff, but not the actual when. But the way I was going, that wasn't going to be that far off.
Men take their lives by suicide about 4 times more often than women. Women perhaps think about suicide, plan suicide, but men actually complete suicide 4 times as often as women.
The Black Dog Charity Ride team has arrived in Perth. This year's ride, though, has been marred by the tragic death of one of its own riders, Les James. The Busselton man died earlier this week after being hit by a truck near Mullewa.
There was only a fleeting moment when the news first hit me. I was probably in shock, but where I thought, does the ride have to end here?
Well, thanks for everybody for coming this afternoon. It's important that we share those things together, because there's a sense in which when you're doing things together, we're actually upholding one another, and that's really what it's all about in the midst of the sadness and the sad news that we received yesterday afternoon, holding one another up and supporting one another. I was sort of thinking about the frailty of life, and I was thinking about how beautiful life is, particularly when you compare it to the scenery that we've been going through over these last few days, because life, it's a beautiful thing, and tragically we've seen a life cut short just yesterday afternoon. And I think in a group like this, we've all experienced moments of sadness and moments of grief. In fact, that's why we ride. That's why we ride. We ride for one another, we ride for those who are experiencing those moments of...
I know Les, and I knew that he would want that ride to go on. And I think this is, well, it had to happen. We had to keep it going. And Les, I think Les probably would have been upset if we stopped the ride.
If the ride had stopped, I think that would have done an injustice to what happened.
We had to go on as much as anything in his honour, and when obviously I couldn't attend Les's funeral in Busselton, and so we decided that on the day of his funeral, at the time that he was laid to rest, we would have a service of our own. And we were in a lovely little town in South Australia called Burra. So we arranged that we would be there on the riverbank to have our own memorial service for Les. And our padre, David Deal, did him proud. Yeah, sorry, still pretty raw.
I knew that our crew would band together. We have a very, very close-knit crew, and it was an opportunity, a sad opportunity, but it was a good time for us to band together and not just talk the talk, but walk the walk in supporting each other and getting us through a really hard moment.
It was a tragedy that I could never envisage. It's an organiser and event's worst nightmare to lose a fellow rider, let alone a friend. And it did cast an immediate shadow, I know, over me, and I think over the whole ride.
We continued the ride, obviously with a cloud hanging over us for some time, and that cloud hasn't totally lifted.
Speaking with Patrick James, Les's oldest boy, who was amazingly stoic and amazing in the face of such tragedy and loss, that he empowered me with his strength to keep it going and finish the mission.
We've had so many good breakfasts, it's hard to choose, but this is one of the better ones. That one. Eating again, but we're not eating bacon and eggs today. Norseman breakfasts are the best. Very good.
I often say there's nothing like a group of motorcyclists that come to town that invigorate a town and generate some interest. And may I say, I think this is your 23rd day of your around Australia trip. Fantastic 14,400 kilometres that you're doing. You've done about 12,000 now, and you're still looking all together and bright and in one piece. So looks can deceive, you say. Looks can deceive. Anyway, thank you very much, and good on you for continuing what you're doing, because what you do does save lives. And from the point of view of the state government and the Premier, we congratulate you and thank you very much. Thanks, Jack. Do you want to say a few words?
I also congratulate you guys. I think it's very important that this black dog is recognised a lot more, and by you doing what you're doing certainly is making a lot more people aware, especially in small communities like this. You know, where farmers are having a struggle, and station owners and just general people who have retired. I was talking to one chap there before that retirement is really important, to plan and do things for your retirement, because sometimes this black dog does creep up on you, and I think it's very important, and I really congratulate you all, and I wish you all well and hope you have a successful tour. Thank you very much.
So how many whales are there approximately?
20. Yeah, 20, and a couple with calves as well. Yeah, so it was well worth stopping by.
Go and see them. Worth 60 of them. Every bit of it.
Like shooting whales in a barrel, mate.
Shooting whales in a barrel, all right. Great.
In Australia, suicide is the leading cause of death for men and women between the ages of 15 and 44. For many sufferers, their troubles begin in adolescence.
I, for some time now, have been concerned about the issue of mental illness amongst our youth. Traditionally, it starts in adolescence, if it's going to start at all, in a lot of people. And if we can encourage the young people to be more aware of their mental health and to be more aware of their fellow students and their friends, I think that just gives them a head start.
Probably the first school that I went to, that was in Denmark. I spoke to the school there, and afterwards I had one of the guys come up to me, one of the young kids actually, 16 and a half years old. He told me that he was really happy with what I said, because I sort of spoke about mateship, and sometimes you just have to be there, all right? So you don't have to say anything, you just have to be there. And he said he was really happy to hear that, because he'd been going out with a young girl for about 18 months, a fairly new relationship, and she suffered from depression. And he said sometimes that's all he could do, was just sit there with her. And he was actually spending time every night, 3 or 4 hours a night, talking to her on the telephone, because he's at a residential school and only goes home on the weekend. So, so that sort of hits home what it's about. Here's a young fella taking on a responsibility. Could have easily dumped her and moved on, but no, he decided to stay with her, and to me that's a highlight.
Cardiovascular disease such as heart attack or stroke or cancer more often strikes towards the end of a person's lifespan. Unfortunately, some young people do get those illnesses, but it's much more an illness in our later years. Whereas mental illness often will strike with its first episode in the teenage years or young adult years, and can actually have an impact on that person's life right across their lifetime. And that's why we really need to focus on helping young people with mental health problems.
Not only are you talking to the teachers and the school bureaucracy so that they can put in place tools for after we've gone, but you can talk to the particularly for me, particularly the older kids in the primary school and in the high school. They can absorb and take in more and realise more. For me, my choice to be involved in that was because my story is real, it's current, and it's close to their age group.
We haven't visited schools everywhere we've been, but what we've done I think has worked really well, and I think it's something that we as an organisation will develop and try to incorporate in every ride that we do, every long ride we do, because I think it's just, I know the riders get a kick out of it, seeing all those smiling faces, seeing the excitement on in the kids' eyes, letting them have a look at the bikes, starting up just general conversations, but just, you know, getting around the subject.
Mental health first aid course is something that is quite similar to a first aid course, but it's looking at how you help someone who might be undergoing a bit of feeling down, a bit of depression, as Steve said, and these can be very, very serious things to deal with.
We've got a few of our guys who are trained as mental health first aid instructors who have then gone on into some of a classroom situation or a group situation in the schools and address the kids more specifically about the issues of looking after themselves and looking after their mates and being aware of their mental health, and I just think that's got to be good.
Okay, it's very much appreciated that you do come through and stop at Woodner. We've had some devastating things happen in our community in recent years, and we feel that it's very good to make people aware, and that all you people are riding around Australia to do that, and that's really wonderful.
It just is a brilliant day to be out doing what you're doing, and in the meantime, while you're doing your riding and you're talking, the focus being around raising awareness around the depression and mental health aspect is just something I cannot stress strongly enough from a school perspective. We've got all our youth growing up and having this sort of aspect to have to work with probably a little bit more intensely in lots of ways.
When things are not going so well in your family with financial situations, when workload at school is building up, or when social problems arise with electronic media like Facebook. Mental health awareness is part of our learning at school. We know that it is important to recognise when someone might be feeling down and needs an ear. Depression and anxiety can be helped, and it is through us realising it that our friends and parents or classmates who suffer it can be supported. Thank you, Black Dog, for being here to support us, raising our awareness about how to get help, and for being here in Woodner today. We hope that you have a safe and productive ride around the country. Thank you.
The importance of getting the message out to young people was made all too clear to one rider early on in the trip as the team arrived in his hometown of Townsville.
My wife and one of my sons came and met us in Ayr and rode back with us, and I was really proud. I was really pleased to have them riding with us. I went home that night. I spoke to one of my other sons about having breakfast, and we were that next morning, and we were laughing and having a good chat on the phone. When I went to bed that night, the world was in a good place. I awoke in the morning, some dark hour of the morning, to my son showing my wife, the son who'd ridden down with us to Ayr, showing my wife a text message. He sent a text to both his brother and to a friend of his, assuming that his brother would sleep through the text message arriving and that his friend would also sleep through it, so it wasn't meant to be seen for a few hours. Fortunately, both parties, my son woke up and heard the text message and read it straight away. The other lady was on her way home from work, and so she got it straight away. She immediately deviated and went to his place, knowing that something wasn't right. The girl arrived before I did, and he was basically standing on a chair. She rang as she was walking up the driveway, and he answered the phone. That basically saved his life. Had she not gone there, had she not arrived before me, I might have arrived to a very, very different scene. So that set a real tone for me. I had to then decide where I was going to go and what I was going to do. I stayed with him for a few hours, talking to him, knew that he was past the absolute crisis point. I left him with the friend so I could go off and get some other things put in place. I ran into some other black doggers. They immediately spoke to Steve Andrews, who then immediately rang me to make sure that I was okay. And one of the things I said to him was I'd love to be able to support him and just wrap him up and bring him with us. And so Steve's reaction was, we'll just chuck him on the bike. I have intercom on my bike, so we talked. And he talked a lot more than I did, and it just gave him the chance to let things roll. And he was talking about things that even to him I think were quite a surprise, that how far back things had been building for him for a long, long time. It gave him a chance to, with nothing else to do but sit on the back and talk to me and listen to music. It gave him a chance to work through things in a safe environment. And of course, as we're travelling, he met all the other black doggers, and the one big thing he said to me when he left at the airport, knowing that I've had depression and knowing what I've been through for the last few years, he was in a state, and he said to me, I felt I was alone. Now, having been on the bike ride and talking with all the other black doggers, and having got addresses and phone numbers, and people have been keeping in touch with him, the one thing he said to me at the airport was, I don't feel alone anymore.
The ride is a highlight in my life and in my year, and being able to in some way share what I found in that first ride on my own around Australia, being able to share that with a group of people, such a diverse group of people, is very fulfilling for me.
I couldn't say there's one highlight, every day brings on something different, but the overall highlight is for me, the number of people that are willing to talk now, compared to when I relay it back to the first ride, that awareness has been beyond, I think, anybody's expectations, and everywhere we go now, we're recognised for what we're doing.
From a scenery point of view and from a road point of view, riding into Victoria River in the Northern Territory, and just through those hills to either side, and just the rocks, the sheer enormity of them, and the colour was just breathtaking. And every corner that you went around, it was like, wow. And you go around another corner, and it was like, wow. And I was singing an old Christian hymn as I came around the corner, thinking, how great Thou art, because I was just thinking of my Creator, and that He had created all of this. So that was pretty awesome.
There's any number of scenery highlights, but I think the real highlight for me was at school we went to a couple of days ago, when we stopped in the schoolyard and the students came out to look at our bikes, and I got talking with one of the students who's probably only grade 8, grade 9, and she was talking about the fact that they lived in the town and they'd moved there with her mum because Dad had killed himself, and they moved there because they felt safer there and felt happier there.
Helping Mary, that's really sticks in my mind. And talking to people that didn't know about the Black Dog Ride, that didn't know what they could do for people. The direct helping other people to pass the word, that would be it.
I think it's the mateship with everyone. I think we've had, you have highs and lows and anything like this. This is sort of like an endurance ride, so, but I think it's the mateship that we've met here. So really before the ride, I probably knew 3 or 4 people. Knew of quite a few on Facebook, so, and probably the statement I said the first night that everyone looks the same on Facebook sort of thing. So, but from that I've made some good friendships and ridden with some good people. We've sort of bonded together and we're all here for a common cause, because really at the start we had 58, 60 people with all different personalities, all different places and agendas, and we're all coming together for the same cause.
The trip, the whole trip. I don't know what I was expecting coming on. I didn't have really any expectations, but the whole trip has just been a blast.
The highlight of our year is coming together as a group. We spend so long behind the scenes talking to people via email and phone, and it's so good to catch up and see those faces and get to know those people. And going back home, away from this great bunch of people, that's going to be sad, it's going to be tough.
And there's just a pang of, wow, you know, we've come so far and now it's all over. But you know, I have made some friends for life, just solid mates.
I'm going to miss a lot of people. I've made some great friends on this ride, but I'm confident that we'll catch up with each other.
You don't realise, but yeah, this has sort of been an everyday life, so you sort of left everything else and this has been the concentration. Now to get back into so-called normality is going to be really hard. So even when I go back and start doing my own rides, I'm going to be looking around for the people I've been riding with for the last 4 or 5 weeks, and they're not there. So
this has been weeks and weeks worth of putting your blood, sweat and tears into this ride.
It's the sense that, you know, we've met people who we've shared something unique together. And nothing will ever be able to take that away from me.
I feel that I'm ready to go again.
The last leg of the ride, as we came into Bondi, down to Bondi Beach, was surreal in a way. It was the end of 32 days out on the road, through thick and thin, ups and downs. We were almost there. Just as we rolled into the car park outside the Bondi Surf Club, the heavens opened heavier than they had for the whole of the day. But as we went under that Holden banner to signify the end of the ride, I don't think any of us cared. We had that amazing police escort that was provided by the New South Wales Commissioner of Police and his team. It was the culmination, it was the end of an amazing journey, of an amazing experience. And I think the feeling amongst all of the riders was one of euphoria, and you could feel it in the air. People were just hugging each other, running around, high-fiving, and there were quite a few people there to greet us, so they were all probably just as wet as us, and I don't think anyone really cared. It was just a wonderful moment and a wonderful way to finish that epic journey we'd been on. The ride set out to achieve, for me, 3 main things. One was what we always try to do, is raise awareness of depression and suicide prevention, and start that conversation that we hope will lead people to seeking help and save lives ultimately. I believe we did achieve that. Whether it was in the road stops out in the middle of nowhere, where people would come up and talk to us because they wondered what all these bikes with these little black dogs were doing riding around the country. or through social media where the chatter was incessant, through radio interviews that a number of the riders did, through newspaper articles, through the TV. We just got the conversation going nationally. I truly believe that. We also set out to raise money for Lifeline and for mental health first aid, and we've raised over $400,000. I think the money's still coming in, and I know that that money will go to good effect. Lifeline will use it to develop or extend their online crisis chat service, which is doing a wonderful job, particularly with young people and particularly in the regional areas. Mental health first aid have a fantastic teen program that they're trying to roll out into underprivileged schools around Australia. The money that they get will help them to do that. So I think we succeeded in the fundraising. And the third one, and it's probably a little bit selfish, but we wanted to have fun. We wanted to have a great ride. We wanted to have a great adventure. I think we all had that. So I think it was a success, beyond my expectations. The dust's now settling on our 2014 Black Dog Ride around Australia, and we look to the future. We look to 2015. This year we had 31 rides. Next year I think we've already got 40, maybe 40 plus. And we could have 8,000 to 10,000 riders taking part in that ride. So we're looking forward to that. And we move on to August when we'll go back to the Red Centre again. But it'll be a little bit different next year. We're actually going to go to Uluru. And then just after that, virtually straight off the saddle and on the plane, we're heading to the US for our first international Black Dog Ride. And we're going to be riding from New York to LA in 21 days and taking our awareness raising and our Little Winstons and our Black Dog Ride shirts and caps, and we're going to travel across America, and we're going to start a conversation over there, which we hope will have the same effect as what we've done here in Australia. Who knows where it will go beyond that. We're excited about the possibilities of visiting countries all over the world to take the Black Dog Ride message, to raise awareness, to start the conversations. Depression and suicide are universal problems, and I guess we're the universal messenger.
When time